What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be doing a 2-round 2025 NFL mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I make content like this every single week. We're going to be doing this with no trades, but we do a 3-round mock draft with trades every single week as well, so don't feel like you're missing out because you're just getting bonus content. But let's get into this. I've been out for a little bit on a nice vacation, so hopefully you guys enjoyed some content while I was gone. I've already done a ton of positional rankings as well, which are based solely on all 22 grades, as is the board below my face. So if you guys are looking at certain guys on there being like, why the hell is like Jihad Campbell up there? That's the one exception. I don't know why the hell I just chose that one, but like Amari and Hampton, why is he at 6? Like, you guys can actually look at a video that ends up breaking that down. So super excited for that. We're going to be getting to the edge class as well as the tackle class next. So super excited, but ton of positions already fully graded out and also been able to put those up. So let's get into this. Let's have a good time. Starting out with the number 1 overall selection. We're the New England Patriots here, and they're in a tough position because, I mean, technically just the pick is Travis Hunter. Like, it's just like, I mean, I don't really love the idea of forcing Travis Hunter, right? I think that, you see my board, you see exactly what I think. And also, to be fair, I really love Travis Hunter. I really do. There's other players in this class I love more, respectively, per position, but I do really like Travis Hunter, and I think he's better as a corner. I think the New England Patriots should try to trade down from this spot if there is a team that is looking for a quarterback. The problem is I just don't see, like, there's not a quarterback value that's worth a number 1 overall pick. There's just not. I mean, you see it right here. When they're talking about rank 19, like, no one wants to talk about the fact Trevor Sigma doesn't even have a quarterback in his top 15. And, yeah, it's legitimate concern. So I don't think there's anybody who's willing to spend the capital, because it's expensive, to move up to 1. So it's honestly the worst draft in history to own, or maybe in the history of my memory, to own the number 1 overall pick. So if you're going to do that, you need to pick someone who is not going to be a bust. And to me, that is Travis Hunter. Because if he fails at corner, you can use him as a receiver. If he fails at receiver, you can use him as a safety. And honestly, him as a free safety, that's honestly the position I think he'd be best at. But Travis Hunter is a Swiss Army knife. It's not because of the number of snaps he played. You guys can see based on where he's at on my board, I'm not one of those people who glazes him for the snaps he plays. I could give a rat's ass. But he's a very good player on both sides of the ball. And I think there's untapped potential at a position that he has yet to play. I think that gives you a lot of risk mitigation for taking him at number 1, and you're just getting yourself a damn good player, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you take number 1. If you take him number 1, take him number 250. If they're a good player and they're on your team, like, that's what truly matters. Like, yeah, you could talk about the cap and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's can you play football? And Travis Hunter can definitely play football and play it well. At number 2 for the Tennessee Titans, a lot of people are going to be wanting for me to go Cam Ward here. It's just another top of the draft that's just not good. And, if you're going to go after best player available, you go after Abdul Carter here. And technically, he's not my best player available. I love James Pierce to death, but I also know that James Pierce has an undesirable frame. So I like to blend my board with what the consensus is. Abdul Carter is the best player that is available at this point. Granted, if you kind of are in a position where you should be looking to address that QB spot. I love Will Levis with all my heart. Like, I am a super fan of Will Levis, but you can't you can't have a team being number 2 overall and then expect for your job security to be in line. But with that being said, if Kirk Cousins gets cut this offseason, we saw Ryan Tannehill kind of have a career resurgence on the Titans. Granted, was with Mike Vrabel, but Brian Callahan actually could make someone like Kirk Cousins work to where if you want to pass on a quarterback here at number 2 overall, I think it might be worth it. And so we're going to test that theory out, because I don't think it's worth it for Tennessee to spend their top pick on a quarterback. Like, I just don't. There's too many issues on this team. There's too much good value here. And I really do think that, you could just go Cam Ward and call it a day. But I am going to elect to go Abdul Carter here, go best player available, and just get yourself a dominant edge rusher. He's super athletic, former linebacker. And he's just a damn good player. My number 7 player on my board, but it includes 2 players above him that are on season-ending injuries. Also, technically Will Johnson is as well, but I feel like the gap right there is, noticeable to the point where I don't think he'd be dropping from number 1. At number 3 overall for the Cleveland Browns, It's not a pretty sight. I know. This is probably where the first quarterback would go, and I think that we're gonna actually go with Cam Ward here. I really do. I think this team has a lot of cap issues. I think that you could restructure a lot of guys to make it feasible for being able to bring back certain players. But at the end of the day, this is a team that even if you get a marginally better quarterback, you're going to have a lot more wins, like wins above replacement wise, which I don't know why the hell I got criticized for using the term wins above replacement. If you criticize someone for using a reference that allows people to understand why someone's valuable, you're an idiot. So don't do that, because the content creator who did that also criticized me on some stuff that, well, looks like the criticism was not worth it from his end to mine. But regardless, wins above replacement wise, which is a legit stat, Cam Ward is extremely valuable, because you look at the threshold for the value of the quarterback on the team, and sometimes you just need him to make one big play. Sometimes you just need him not to make a big mistake, which Cam Ward makes some big mistakes, but I think that it's been more mitigated by his big success and his big playability. So I think that, you're basically getting Jameis Winston high-level play with a little bit less of the Jameis Winston low-level play. And so far, that relatively has worked out, and if you do continue to mitigate the negative parts of the Jameis Winston play, you very well might be in a very good spot for being able to make a big push, because you don't need to have something super sexy, even though Cam Ward is that. Just sometimes you need someone to be able to make one big play and not make as many Jameis Winston mistakes, and that's what Cam Ward can do. At number 4 for the New York Giants, they dropped to number 4, and so everyone's like, oh my God, they dropped out of the QB race. I don't think so. I honestly think it gives us more comfortability to send someone like Shedeur Sanders to New York. And so we're going to do it. First off, I'm going to do my best to mitigate my own opinions on the quarterback class. These are my top 2 QBs. I think they'll go in the top 10. I don't think they're worth top 10 picks. They're not in my top 32. That is adjusted for positional value. I'm just not really a huge fan of quarterbacks that have the respective issues that I think are legitimate limitations in the NFL. Like for Cam Ward, I do think that he's not as good of an athlete as I was hoping for him to be, but I do love Cam. He has a crazy arm talent, but the mistakes he makes as a processor this late into his career are relatively concerning. For Shedeur Sanders, he takes horrible sacks. He takes super deep drops. He's not very athletic. It's just, there are issues. And if you want to try to get all pissy about it and then say, oh my God, like you're just such a hater. No. I just want to say what I honestly believe. And the fact is, quarterbacks that go at the top of the draft do not always work out. We've seen that time and time again. So I do think that Shedeur and Cam would be like QB7 range for me in last year's class. But this year, you talk about supply, you talk about demand. Sometimes those type of players get pushed up. At number 5 for the Jaguars, I've been super happy by doing this move a billion times. I'm going to continue to do it. Will Johnson, my best player in the class. He's ridiculously talented. He's going to be Patrick Surtain. I don't know why. I guess I know why he declared. He probably was told, you're going to be going in the top 10. But, he had a little bit of a down year in terms of injury, in terms of health. And hopefully he can just come back and bounce back and be the player that we all know that he can be. I think that he's up there, easily with the Quinn Mitchells of the world. You just got to go to the right spot. But Will Johnson, I think, is relatively scheme versatile, which is what I love. At number 6 for the Panthers, I've been making this move a lot. I'm going to continue to do so. Granted, I am tempted to go Tetairoa McMillan. Now, he is fully graded. He is in my top 40 overall as a receiver, but in the role for the Panthers, because I have scheme-specific grades, in the role for the Panthers, he would be my number 9 player in the class. He would be above Travis Hunter, and he would be above Jihad Campbell. So that's certainly something that you can consider here for the Panthers, because drops are a massive issue now. I don't really understand. I'm trying to remember. You guys can end up dropping it in the chat as well. But I'm trying to remember what Xavier Leggett's drop rate was at South Carolina. But I didn't expect for it to be like this. This is a little bit different. The ball's a different size, to be fair. So, that's why people take into account hand size, especially with quarterbacks, etc. But Tetairoa McMillan, I do think would be a very wise option. But I also think this class has a lot of receivers and not many that have the talent level of Mason Graham. If you can continue mitigating the amount of times the offense needs someone like Tetairoa McMillan on the field to be able to make a crazy catch, I think that would be more beneficial than having someone like Tetairoa McMillan on the field to bail out a defense that's not necessarily as talented as it would be with Derrick Brown and Mason Graham up the middle. At 7 for the New York Jets, Tedro McMillan is starting to become an enticing option for me. Malachi Starks as an actual safety is incredible, and their safety core is pretty damn barren. Granted, free agency is pretty good for that. Safeties aren't too expensive, so it's understandable for there as well. And I think I might end up still opting for the route that I think might be underrated and semi-logical, and that is tight end. Remember, there's no trades in this. If you could end up trading back, like I'd have a team like the Saints move up here in a heartbeat, right? They have an extra third, they have an extra 4th round pick. I think that'd be beautiful. Like, honestly, I'm probably going to spoil the fact that I'm probably doing that later this week in the 3-round mock draft. I'm going to move up with the Saints to the Jets. So I think this is a great move via trade down, but since we can't do it, I'm still going to pull the trigger here and go after Tyler Warren. I think a quarterback's best friend is a really reliable tight end. We're seeing with Brock Bowers, speaking of the Las Vegas Raiders here at 8, with Brock Bowers, you're seeing that, he's a cornerstone piece for good, and Tyler Warren is not technically on that level, but Brock Bowers should have been. He was my number 2 player in the class, and that was adjusted for the tight end value. Like, he should have been the pick to whatever team ended up taking, thinking about it. You could have taken him to Arizona. Don't think that would have been the right move, but I mean, technically McBride and Bowers would be pretty sick. But you could also talk about LA, but LA got a good guy. New York got their guy. But you continue going down the list, and it's like Brock Bowers still might be worth more than that. And teams are going to come to realize that. You look at a lot of the top teams, and they have reliable tight end options, and the Jets don't. Tyler Warren is fantastic. He also is going to be an asset in the run game, which it just helps out the whole offense if you have a reliable top-tier tight end. Now, talk about, the money. I mean, who gives a shit about the money, man? Not many because the tight end value or tight end position is not paid a ton, there's not going to be very many top-tier weapons that are available for you to pay. Keep that in mind as well. At number 8 overall, we got the Las Vegas Raiders, and I wish they valued running back as much as they should. Otherwise, I would go Ashton Jeanty in a heartbeat for this team. But I do think this team has an underrated need for a number 1 receiver, and putting Tedro McMillan with Brock Bowers, I have yet to do it, but I think I'm gonna. I really like the idea of putting T-Mac there with Brock Bowers and having a massive 1-2 punch. And, then you get your running back, you get your quarterback later on. No quarterback's worth it at this spot. You can bring in Kirk Cousins if you want to. Try to sign Sam Darnold. I think that he's staying with Minnesota. Trade for J.J. McCarthy. Like, you can do whatever you want, but in this simulation, Tedro McMillan's going to be the guy. At number 9 for the Chicago Bears, offensive line is probably going to be the spot where I focus. I love Ashton Jeanty to this team. Like, it's just the easiest way to mitigate offensive line issues for your quarterback is to basically be able to shift them from a passing mindset to a running mindset, because I don't think the running game is actually that bad for the Bears, and I think Ashton Jeanty could extremely improve it. But I actually am going to flip back and go after Josh Simmons here to the Bears. I started kind of playing Moneyball with the offensive tackle position with them and drafting it in the 2nd round, which I honestly thought ended up going quite well. But I do think that there is a massive gaping hole in that offensive line, and you need to get the best talent available. Josh Simmons ended up having a season-ending injury, but at the same time, I don't think that that's indicative of his overall health profile. People get injured. It happens, but I haven't really seen it be a massive, consistent issue. He was the best offensive lineman by a good margin in the class coming into this, and so I'm going to have him go here to Chicago. At number 10, for the New Orleans Saints, a lot of really intriguing options here, but I think you got to go the best player available. And I think this team is willing to stretch its morals a little bit, so to speak, and go after an edge profile that they don't always go after. And that's James Pierce here. James Pierce is fantastic. I mean, he might be 243 pounds. He'll probably be 250 by the combine. I can definitely tell that in the offseason. I'm sure he's going to be putting on some mass. But this guy is one of the best players that I've studied in the past couple of years. Like, I'd probably put him top 10 in the past, 3 years. If you stuck all the draft classes together, he still would probably be in that territory. I call him miniature Dallas Turner. I think that he generates speed to power better than pretty much anybody outside of Dallas Turner at that size. And he's honestly very underrated as a run defender as well. He's still putting it together as a pass rusher, and he's extremely productive, even though he is still putting it together. I don't know why people don't like him the way they should, but I'm not going to let that dissuade me from taking him where he belongs. At number 11 for the San Francisco 49ers, I think offensive line is the key here. Just continue developing the offensive line. Ashton Jeanty to this team would be absolutely ridiculous. I mean, technically speaking, CMC has not been reliable enough in terms of health-wise to be there. But that's far from a reason to kind of move on from him. I will be going Kelvin Banks here, who's going to be a top-tier option for them at offensive tackle. It's a surprise for me because I've been saying if you don't think Ashton Jeanty is going in the top 10, you're an idiot. But if you look at the way the board kind of fell, Ashton's not going at number 3. That's where you need a Saquon Barkley level player. And then the next team that could see it is the Bears and the Niners technically. But even with the Bears, I still have legitimate considerations elsewhere. So it's quite surprising. I do not understand how this is going to happen, but the running backs could easily fall farther than where they should. But for the Colts, a good old reliable move that I haven't done in a long time is Malachi Starks, and I'm happy to send him back to Indianapolis. Versatile defensive back, not necessarily the biggest position of need, but it's just getting someone very similar to what I was talking about with Travis Hunter at number 1. You know that he can fit at a multitude of positions and work in the majority of them. The only time he's been really cooked is when you put him one-on-one versus a fast slot receiver. Just don't do that. I mean, you might say that's easier said than done, but it's kind of not. If you know that there's a very athletic, small, shifty receiver, do not put someone who has relative athletic limitations on them. No-brainer move. So I think that the NFL DCs are going to be smart enough to do that. I don't know why Georgia didn't learn that lesson, but that's beside me. They're still doing well, and we'll see what they do when they potentially. I don't know if they can face Texas again, but next time they go up against a very athletic slot receiver, are they going to put Malachi Starks one-on-one? If they do, we'll just leave it there. Let's just leave it there. Let's go to number 13 for the Dallas Cowboys, and you got to go Ashton Jeanty at this point. Pretty much going to be, I say it's Devin Singletary on steroids, but I mean, it's just a certain point where you have to go best player available. This team's going to take a massive step up. Rico Dowdle, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if he reached 1,000 yards or not, but he's done a fantastic job for the role that was expected of him, and Ashton Jeanty could blow that out of the water. At 14 for the Arizona Cardinals, the big thing that makes me question whether I want to go after someone like Jalen Walker here is whether they bring back Baron Browning. If they do, then you have way too many cooks in the kitchen, right? You got Zaven, you got BJ, you also have Baron Browning, like I was talking about. Then you have Xavier Thomas as well. You might just get to the point where you're just like, man, this is a little too much. And so I'm actually going to look at the offensive line here because I think this team could certainly use it. Arianti Ursary is someone who could potentially play that right tackle spot for the long run, but he also could play guard. The question is, do you want to roll the dice on an actual tackle like Cam Williams? Do you want to roll on someone who's going to be pretty much a guaranteed success, but possibly on the interior with Will Campbell? Or do you want to go for a little bit of a hybrid of a tackle, but not also a right tackle who probably needs a little more polish in Arianti Ursary? That's the big question. I'm actually going to go just after the best player available on the offensive line, and that's Will Campbell. Sometimes you don't need to get sexy and go after the pure tackle pick. Sometimes you just need to go after the best offensive lineman. And I think protecting Kyler is super key. Will Campbell could end up working out as a tackle. He actually has graded out fairly well still as a tackle. I just think that he's so much better as a guard that I would probably put him to there. At number 15 for the Miami Dolphins. So I wish they valued offensive line enough to make this move. They don't. I think we're going to get to the point where after the combine and everything, we're going to get to the point that Nick Eamon-Warry is a top 20 pick. And it's going to be the Seahawks, whether it's going to be the Falcons, whether it's going to be the Bengals, the Dolphins, or hell, even the Texans. I think all these teams should be interested in Nick Eamon-Warry. He's a top 25 player for me, sitting there at 23 overall. Granted, there are some players above him that I still think could be moved down when reevaluated, but regardless, Nick Eamon-Warry has been unbelievable this year. I mean, just one of the most polished players in the class for his size at 6'3", 227. He's going to run in the 4.3s, low is 4.4 flat. He flies, and one of the most athletic players, and then you add onto it that he's 6'3", 230, and he has great ball skills. Like, that's just someone that you need to bank on, and especially with Javon Holland departing, you need to end up having something a little bit more consistent there in the secondary, and Nicky Memori brings that to the table. At number 16 for the Cincinnati Bengals, we got to look at defense here. Now, I mean, you could try to look and say, hey, Colston Loveland could be a perfect Mike Gesicki replacement. That could be a dark horse move for the team. You also could look at Amari and Hampton here, who I absolutely adore. But I think this team needs to go after some edge help. They need to go after some defensive interior. And so I'm actually going to go after Jalen Walker here. I know that you guys have been willing to flex outside of the Sam Hubbard role, which is, kind of what a lot of people want with like guys like Nick Scorton to be able to fill. But Jalen Walker is someone who is just unbelievably talented as both a linebacker as well as an edge rusher. So very similarly to what I was talking about earlier with guys like Travis Hunter, Malachi Starks, this is also a Swiss Army knife to where you can use him pretty much in a multitude of roles early on in his career until you find the long-term one. At 17 for the Falcons, that would have been my dream pick with Jalen Walker. I just ended up disarming myself. By the way, I always have Ben Morrison returning in these. But for the Atlanta Falcons, edge rusher, it's just the easy one to go after at this point. And I might want to go back to Ohio State with JT Tuimoloau here. I think Mykel Williams is the more realistic pick because people just love the explosive guy with a lot of untapped potential with a great frame. But JT Tuimoloau has just been fantastic. I mean, he really, really has. And I think that he is superior talent-wise to Mykel Williams, maybe without the ceiling of Mykel, but I don't think the Falcons need to be consistently looking for ceiling. Sometimes when you don't have something that works, just get a damn good player. Don't try to get the next Myles Garrett. You don't need that. Sometimes you need just a top 15 to 20 edge rusher who's going to be consistent, who's going to be something to game plan around for the offensive coordinator of the other team, and somebody who will just legitimately make a difference. You don't need to roll the dice on another failed edge project, which I'm not saying Mykel will be, but I think you just need something stable. And JT Tuimoloau is exactly that. So we're going to go back to Ohio State for another 270-pounder because I'm trying to remember the name of the last guy you guys took in like the third or fourth round, but I actually really did like him from Ohio State as well. But number 18 for the Seahawks, this is a quick one, easy one. We're going after Ariante Ursary. He's going to play guard role for you guys until he's ready to be polished up enough to be kicked out to tackle. But I assume that Abe Lucas will continue to have the health problems that he's had. It's just, unfortunately, a trend is a trend. You got to call it as it is. A spade is a spade. And he hasn't been reliably healthy, but when he is healthy, he's good. Ariante Ursary would be a really good guard in the short run. You need offensive line. That's the bottom line. At number 19 for the Houston Texans, Luther Burden, I think, is going to be the pick that I'm going to go after. Tank Dell, man. I mean, breaks my heart what happened to him. Was like a torn PCL, LCL, ACL, dislocated kneecap, like all at once. And it breaks my heart because, when you watched him at the Senior Bowl, it's like, wow, this is one of the best route runners that we've seen. He didn't really test all that well, like a 4 or 5, but at the same time, the NFL is not about how fast you run a straight line. It's how much separation you could generate, and that's through a multitude of different aspects, including explosiveness, route running, etc. And he's great at that. But there is, unfortunately, the factor of physics. And when you are a small guy, there's going to be a good chance not necessarily going to handle a lot of contact over time. And I'm not going to say that's what exactly was the reason for his knee injury, but he hasn't been reliably healthy. And then you look at Nico Collins even. Nico hasn't been reliably healthy either. You need to get weapons on this team. And Luther's going to be that guy for you. It's just, unfortunately, Diggs, unreliable Nico in terms of health, and then Tank. Like, you're going to be without 3 receivers for at least a portion of next year if the trend continues with Nico Collins. But at a very minimum, 2 of your top 3 receivers coming to the year are not going to be on your team next year, or not going to be available because Tank is going to need a full 18 months to heal up. But Luther Burden will take a little bit of that stress off. At number 20 for the Denver Broncos, Emeka Egbuka feels like a solid option. They just need to continue building around Bo Nix, and I think that's going to be the smart thing to do. So let's not dilly-dally too much. Emeka Egbuka improved noticeably this year because he was far healthier, and that's why health is such a big factor as well. Emeka did not look like himself in 2023, and it was just I'm going to be honest, it was kind of embarrassing to watch him because like you saw the flashes and it's like, dude, the consistency was just not there. But Emeka Egbuka is finally back in full form. I love to see it. I think he is like lingering right around. Yeah, he's at number 38 overall on my board right now, which is a really good spot because receiver is very hard to grade well in. Very hard. And Emeka Egbuka has done a great job. At number 21 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I think I actually might rock Jihad Campbell here and send him to edge. That's the thing, man. Jihad Campbell's built to be an edge. I think he was edge 3 of his class when he came out of high school, and someone ended up talking about this, so don't confirm it from me. But, there were so many edges there. Braswell, Turner. Overton ended up coming in, but there was just a plethora of edge rushers to the point where his value, his skill set as an athletic player could work well as a linebacker. So we're going to transition him back to edge and take over Joe Tryon-Shoyinka's role. He's the number 9 player in the class, and I think that when he tests off the charts, people are going to really start wondering, how can I use this guy rather than can I use this guy? At number 22 for the Los Angeles Chargers, I think that Colson Loveland's a great pick here. Could have taken him there for the Broncos, but I take a tight end every damn time to him. So we're going to let Colson Loveland fall a little bit because at 245, he does have relative limitations that might scare someone like Sean Payton who likes a sizable tight end. But regardless, both these teams get great value for a great player. At 23 for the Los Angeles Rams, I always love to look at that left tackle spot. We've kind of depleted those at the moment. Wyatt Milam probably going to be more of a guard profile. So I will be looking at corner, and Ben Morrison's returning in this just because I'm of the mindset that hip injury, true junior, probably should return. Probably will be a top 5 pick in next year's class. So not this year's class, literally 2026 NFL draft. So I'm looking at the guys who would be available, and the one, I absolutely love Azariah Thomas. I'm just a sucker for him. Trey Amos is someone's going to be a big enforcer, but I do think that Azariah Thomas is going to test off the charts. He's going to show out. People are going to be surprised when they end up continuing to watch him and realizing he's a first-round player, and I'm going to send him to Los Angeles. I love him to death, 6'2", 198. He's been a my guy since the start of the year, another player who I'm very happy to represent. He's a great athlete. He's very physical, still developing. Might not have the rookie year you're looking for, but he's definitely going to have the career that you would want picking in the first round. He's my number 11 player. And number 24 for the Green Bay Packers, Nick Scorton's available. Kind of hard to say no to that at the moment, but I'm actually going to go for somebody who, there's a lot of, actually, to be fair, I could wait till round 2 for that role. I'm actually going to go Nick Scorton here. You need to just get someone who could set an edge and just be consistent. You don't need someone like Lucas Van Ness, who was a one-trick pony coming in that people loved. Nick Scorton's actually a polished player. I like Nick Scorton, and it's really good value to take him at this point. I know corner could be a little sexier, but I really do think that if you want to have somebody, you could even go after a couple edges based on the different roles that they can have in Jeff Hafley's system. But Nick Scorton going to be the guy for me. For the Pittsburgh Steelers at 25, a couple of routes that you can go. Technically, I would even potentially look at offensive tackle, but wide receiver, you got guys like Io Maynor, Higgins, Royals, technically Bond, but I usually have Bond return in these as well. Just spoiler alert for that. But I really do think the best value position for us is to go after that corner 2. That corner 2 spot is so valuable. And I love Darian Porter. I think that's something that I've gone a couple times now recently, but I love Trey Amos to death. Trey Amos is fantastic, and he's big. He's physical. Even though he's 6'1", 190, he plays like he's 6'2", 200 pounds. He is built, and he's very physical. He's also great at the catch point, and I think you need a physical catch point kind of corner in the AFC North, and that's what Trey Amos can bring. At number 26 for the Washington Commanders, people are talking about going after offensive tackle for this team, and because I see two teams that they're probably going to be facing consistently in the playoffs that both could use offensive tackle, I'm actually going to change things up and go after Cam Williams out of Texas. At number 27 for the Baltimore Ravens, I'm actually going to go after defensive interior here, and I'm going to go after Kenneth Grant. I think the upside and potential is too good to pass on, and he's a freak athlete, good motor, just is still kind of putting it all together. At number 28, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. Michael Williams is here. That's kind of just like the dream pick. We're having one of my favorite talents slip right here in Amari Hampton, who's literally a top 10 player for me. I just don't really see teams who value Amari and Hampton. I mean, I technically should have sent him to the Steelers, but I just don't see the Steelers taking another round 1 running back at the moment. But I digress. For the Eagles specifically, though, I'm going to look at that edge core. Again, a lot of guys who are going to be potentially leaving. Mykel Williams is worth testing out because he does have the athleticism and versatility to work well with Vic Fangio, so I'm going to take it. At number 29 for the Buffalo Bills, this is an easy one for me. Tyleik Williams is on the board. He's one of my favorite players in the entire class. I'm going to be taking him here to just create a solid, reliable defensive interior. At number 30 for the Detroit Lions, I think edge rusher probably is the best value at this point. I saw Christian Mahogany doing a really good job, and he has a ton of potential. I think I might leave guard in this mock draft to be something for this mock draft, or for like future mock drafts. I'm going to go after Shamar Stewart here. He's deciding to come out. He's 6'6", 290. He's a really unique build, and he's someone who's a damn good player. And number 31 for the Vikings, again, if you could trade back, do so, but I'm going to Amari and Hampton here all day. He's a game-changing back. He's a blue chip back, and I do think if he slips to 32, he's going to the Chiefs. So speaking of, we do have the Kansas City Chiefs here, and, technically Harold Fannin might have played himself up into this range. I mean, the dude did absolutely, he's been cutting up every single team, every single down. This guy is just ridiculous. But I also don't know why Trev doesn't like him that much. Not for me to really discuss in this video, but for Kansas City, it's pretty much wide receiver. Talk about offensive tackle, and I've said this several times. I'm going to say it once more. You guys just have shown, unfortunately, sometimes you just have to admit your weaknesses. You guys cannot develop tackles. You have 2 guys that you've tried to develop there in Sua Matea as well as Wanya Morris. Both of them suck. That's just the truth. And I think you can agree with that. I hate to admit it too, because I honestly want you guys to succeed at those tackle positions, but sometimes you just got to admit, not very good at some. And so I think Sua Matea still could have success at right tackle after Jawan Taylor leaves. I'll put that out there. But taking another developmental tackle at 32 is not going to solve your problem. It's just not. So let's address other positions. I think corner is a position that would be a really good one to develop. And just a little farther away, you can go after Darian Porter here. Jahdae Barron, I think, is a little too similar to what you have in McDuffie right now. I think Darian Porter brings at 6'4", 200 a size and foot speed ability that you can't really find anywhere else. At number 33 for the New England Patriots, we already took after Travis Hunter. We have to go after offensive line here. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. Jonas Savania could certainly be a really good addition. He's played left and right tackle, but his losses are pretty bad. Pretty bad. So I'm looking at Membu. I'm looking at Connerly. I'm looking technically at Donovan Jackson, but he's going to be a guard. But pretty slim pickings here, except for Josh Connerly and Jack Nelson. Jack Nelson, someone who I really love, true left tackle build, but I'm going to go after the player who's been a bit more consistent this year in Josh Connerly. For the Tennessee Titans at 34, we're going to go after wide receiver. We went after edge in the first round. You got Io Maynor here. You got Higgins. You got Royals. You even got Trey Harris for that matter. But Io Maynor elected to come out. I think he got a good draft grade, and he's a really, really good receiver. You might say, who's throwing him the ball? Sometimes you got to get the guys to throw the ball to before you get the guy who's throwing the damn ball. And number 35 for the Cleveland Browns, running back could certainly be on the table here, but I want to address some other positions, including offensive line. And I think someone like Jonas Savania, who can play a multitude of positions, is going to help out the interior of the offensive line in the short run. When injuries pop up, he can also help out the tackle spots. I'm going to go after a flexible player in Jonas Savania. At 36 for the New York Giants, another team that I think could end up using offensive line here, but maybe free agency might be better for it. Let's go after Siobhan Rebel here. Jahdae Barron just could be too slot specific to where you're having a competition between him and Andrew Phillips. Let's not have any potential issues, and let's get someone who's a really good player, who's a true boundary. At number 37 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, we've already gone after our corner. We're actually going to look at potentially offensive line here, and I really do like Wyatt Milam. At this point, really good value, flexible in the interior of the offensive line, can fill in for tackle if need be. At 38, you guys know what I love to do. I like to get sexy with it, but I'm going to check one thing really quick, and I feel like I'm going to be pretty comfortable with the defensive interiors there at 41. I'm going to get sexy and then go after another Ohio State offensive lineman. He is not a tackle. He's just playing tackle currently, Donovan Jackson. So let's see. I can end up showing you guys like this. We got Josh Simmons and Donovan Jackson, left tackle, left guard. You can end up having them work together the way that they have, and I love that for them. And number 39 for the New York Jets. First round, we ended up, oh damn, so it's not updating it anymore. I was hoping to see it just like repopulate, but we got Tyler Warren there in the first, and here in the second, this might be the spot where you can go Jalen Milroe. I don't think Jalen Milroe should come out. Like, that's the big thing. I just don't think Jalen Milroe should come out. But if you can get Aaron Rodgers for a year to mentor this guy, just take the opportunity to do so. And number 40 for the Las Vegas Raiders, would have loved for Jalen Milroe to slip to them. He did not. And so other positions I think this team needs to focus on, look at the boundary corners. You can get someone like Jahdae Barron, who's a super flexible, sexy pick here. In the first round, ended up going after T-Mac. Let's go to the defensive side and go after Jahdae Barron. And number 41 for the Chicago Bears, it's edge rusher or it's defensive interior. I love the defensive interiors at this point. You got Walter Nolan. He's slipping a little bit, but honestly, I don't think that's like insane. There's a lot of really good defensive interior talents here. And I'm actually going to go after the one that's a little bit more raw than everyone else when you look at the amount of snaps he's taken. But he might be the best of the bunch. I'm going after Omar Norman Law out of Tennessee. And number 42 for the New Orleans Saints. This is a team at this point, I actually might end up going after Walter Nolan. He's done a good job this year overall. I just think that personally, I watched his best games. I watched his worst games. I do think that a lot of his production is more so based on the failure of offensive line more than his overall success on the defensive line. That's a hot take, but it's an honest take. And I'm going to go after Walter Nolan here, though, because, well, he is very productive and he is a very talented player. For the Niners at 43, first round, we took Kelvin Banks. By the way, good feature PFF. Good job. I'm going to look at defensive interior and edge as well. I think that this team needs to focus. I mean, you could also look at a third corner, but you got LT Overton here, who I think should return, but we're actually going to go with him here to the Niners. He's going to be someone who, again, I'm predicting returns, but for this mock draft, we'll have him come out and go to San Francisco. At 44 for the Indianapolis Colts, we ended up going after a safety in round one in Malachi Starks, which is not usual. We finally got to break the mold. Here we're going Harold Fannin. Harold Fannon's a fantastic tight end. Could even taken him there for the Niners, but the Niners have a lot of issues with potentially better value. Harold Fannon's just a fantastic tight end. No pun intended, but he ended up, his only issue is he's 230. I think he can get up to 240. I think he's a better blocker than people give him credit for, but there still is that concern, which is why he'll probably be here in the second. For the Niners, jeepers. For the Cowboys, I'm going to look at TJ Sanders here. Running back, defense, interior, the easy positions to go. I love TJ Sanders to death. So it's just easy for me for the Cowboys in a 2-rounder. It starts getting a little bit more exciting when we expand to the 3, which obviously will be later this week. At number 46 for the Cardinals, we went after offensive line with Will Campbell there in the first. Here in the second, I'm actually going to opt for defensive interior. I really like Derek Harmon. He's not as high on my board as some other people, but it's pretty similar to what Trev has right here. And it's a really good value for him to go. I really like Darrell Jackson. Technically, man, Darius Alexander's a beast, though. I watched a couple drives of his because I have very limited all-22 on him. This guy's really freaking good. But the guy who I love the most, actually, is DeMonte Capehart. I watch his worst games. I watch his games with the most reps. This dude pushes the pocket like nobody else. I still think that it's more realistic to see Derek Harmon go in front of those two, but I do want to give those guys some shout-outs. But you got Miami here at 47. End up going after a safety in round 1. Could go after offensive line here, but I don't know if they're going to opt for that over guys like Darius Alexander here, who can help out the defensive interior. 6'4", 310. I think this dude's a stud, and he's going to continue showing it. I forget if he's going to the Senior Bowl or not, but if he is, he's going to go through the roof in terms of his stock. At number 48 for the Cincinnati Bengals, I might be going back to the well of defensive interiors here as well. We ended up going in the first round. Oh, we can use this now on Jalen Walker. We might actually opt for interior offensive line. You got Tyler Booker available. He's slipping, but, in this mock, we're going to take him here at 48. Let's not let him slip any further. At 49 for the Atlanta Falcons, the Bengals need interior offensive line help. I don't think anybody's going to disagree. Apologies for the lack of analysis there. But for the Atlanta Falcons, corner 2, certainly a thing. Head coach that calls timeouts, probably something as well. I'm going to look at corners here, and I love Davison Igbinosun, but I'm actually going to opt for Jermari Harris out of Iowa. So, of course, once again, don't know why he's not listed on here. It is what it is. But Jermari Harris, corner out of Iowa, my number 31 player on my board. He's really athletic, high potential, good athlete, just needs a little bit of a mentorship, and that's exactly what you get with AJ Terrell. But at number 50 for the Seattle Seahawks, we took offensive line there in the first, and here in the second, I mean, you can go a multitude of positions. I think wide receiver is not a bad one. I mean, I'm not having Isaiah Bond come out in this, but you can go Jalen Royals to be that successor there to Tyler Lockett. But, tight end, I don't think there's anybody worth it. But I really do think we could still just go double up on the offensive line. I think this team could use it. And Marcus Bowe can play the other guard spot. I really love that 1-2 punch that you can get. And Marcus also is a right tackle. So, again, in case of injuries, could also sub him in at right tackle. Friend of the show, really athletic player. Someone who I would have taken here for the Texans, but he goes there at 50. So, for the Texans here at 51, Tate Ratledge is the easy choice. I think that's pretty heavily stacked towards going after Ratledge at this point. But we should go after defensive interior as well. And Darrell Jackson's here, but the guy who I really love is DeMonte Capehart. I'm going to go after the defensive interior for this team and let them address guard elsewhere. At 52 for the Denver Broncos, you could go after something like Gunnar Helm at this point, but again, I think there's going to be some tight ends free agency, forgetting who's going to be available, but, address tight end. I mean, I kind of regret in retrospect not going after Colson Loveland, but, it is what it is. But for the Denver Broncos, I don't really think there's too many positions you guys need desperately. Running back certainly could be one of them. I like Caleb Johnson, but I'm going to go after Quinshon Judkins here. I think he's a better talent than Caleb Johnson. If you want to know why, I have a full video breaking down the running backs of the class. At number 53 for the Buccaneers, technically could have waited for Prince Umami Ellen, but we went Jihad Campbell there in the first. Here in the second, you could go after a versatile defensive back piece. I honestly don't think that going after Davison Igbinosun would be a bad idea. You can use that physicality like nobody's business. I love him to death. He's a top 25 player on my board. And I think if used properly, this guy's going to be a freak. So I'm actually going to use him. I'm going to deploy him here at 53. At 54 for the Chargers, ended up going after Colson Loveland round 1. I think you need to go after offensive line or running back here in round 2. Caleb Johnson feels like the right move. But I also think that Tate Ratledge would be extremely valuable. Just a consistent interior offensive line piece is going to be just one step closer to a more successful season. At number 25, we have the Carolina Panthers, and now I think I'm going to go after someone who is very, very reliable. You got Jaden Higgins here, who's also 6'4", who is 215 pounds, and is just reliable. You took a wide receiver or a defensive interior in the first. There's a lot of edge rushers that are available that could be a steal, but I'm going to go after Jaden Higgins here to have at least something reliable there in the pass catching room. At 56, we had the Packers. Ended up taking Nick Scorton there in the first. I'm going to look at corner here at this point. To be fair, a lot of guys who I really loved got taken. It is what it is. My next best guy is DJ McKinney, but DJ probably might not be coming out. Got Quincy Riley, who I really like, but I don't really know if Jeff Hafley is going to be all down for that. So other position to look at is that 3-tech spot. Again, you got Nick Scorton here. You can look at Darrell Jackson. Darrell Jackson's a very underrated player. I don't know why people don't like him that much, but at least I do know that Mel Kiper really likes Darrell Jackson, so we're going to go after Darrell there. Then we have the Pittsburgh Steelers at 57 in round 1. We went after Trey Amos. Could go after Caleb Johnson here. Does kind of feel like a Pittsburgh Steeler kind of back, but I'm actually going to go after wide receiver and go after Jalen Royals. We're going to get our specialty weapon on the boundary for both offense and defense. At 58 for the Washington Commanders, I'm going to go after edge rusher at this point. Princey Umanmi Ellen is available. I think that is an absolute home run pick. Baltimore, I'm also going to the edge core. In the first round, we went after Kenneth Grant. I just think the value is too damn good for all these players. And I'm actually going to go after Mike Green out of Marshall. For Philly, we went Michael in round number 1. Technically could have waited here till round number 2 to go after any of these players. But damn, I'm surprised Dylan Gabriel's ranked 53 on this board. That's actually quite nuts. But tight end wise, you could be looking at some. I think Jake Brenningstool is so underrated. I don't know why the hell PFF doesn't know how to grade tight ends. I'm just gonna say it. I think they really don't know how to grade tight ends. But regardless, It's a team that could use tight end, could use the developmental offensive tackle. I mean, you could use Membu at this point. Membu's such a stud. We're going to go Membu. He ended up slipping farther than he should have. So he's someone who I think could go potentially round 1, but he's going to be playing a right guard spot in the short run, but he's actually a true right tackle in the long. Just go best player available at that point. At 61 for the Buffalo Bills, we went defensive interior in round number 1 with Tyleik Williams. We got to go edge rusher here because the value is just insane. And so I'm looking at Zero Waku right here, used to that type of climate there. And so we're going to go from Massachusetts to New York. Donovan Zero joining Tyleik Williams. At 62 for the Detroit Lions, we went edge in round number 1. Here in round number 2, I actually might look for someone who could potentially play center in the long run. You got Gray Zabel here, who I really do like. But I also do think you could try to look at a wide receiver for the boundary. I know a lot of people love Savion Williams. I'm not one of them. Just spoiler alert. I'm just not a big Savion Williams guy. Ricky White would be interesting, but I'd want someone who's a little bit more of an enforcer. And if you're going to look for an enforcer, you got Trey Harris. You technically do have Savion Williams as well. No one wants to talk about the fact he has a pretty bad drop rate. I don't know why that's not a factor, but we'll leave it there. But wide receiver is a key thing for me for the Lions. I also do think you could try to upgrade the linebacking core or defensive interior room. And honestly, I think going after best player available like Deone Walker, who has extremely high potential and needs to learn, not a bad idea. So we're going to go Deone Walker to be in that rotation. Feel free to comment on that because I wanted to take a little bit of an out of left field approach when you go after with that 62 pick, but would be curious to hear what y'all have to say. At number 63 for the Buffalo Bills, I'm going to go after wide receiver to replace Amari Cooper, and that wide receiver is Ricky White. He has 4 punt blocks on the gear. He is absolutely dynamic as a receiver. I ended up calling him mini Marvin Harrison, and so I feel like that's going to be pretty good value there at 63. And at 64 for the Kansas City Chiefs, man, I mean, there's so many good players here, but Caleb Johnson, a bell cow back to work very well there with Isaiah Pacheco. I think that just takes a ton of stress off of Patrick Mahomes having to make every damn play. Wide receiver-wise, you could also look at someone like Xavier Restrepo. I'm having Bond return in this one. That's why I'm not taking him. But, technically you could look at that as well. Sam Williams is someone who I recommend for you guys. But Caleb Johnson, I think, can't escape the second round. So I'm going to be taking him there. So that is going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.